Beneath the endless whisper of Oregon's pines, a night of laughter dissolved into silence. What began as a weekend escape for three friends, Clara, Jonas, and Ella, became one of the state's most disturbing mysteries. Their campsite, discovered days later, looked almost staged. Tents zipped, food half-cooked, and 3 phones left recording fragments of nothing but static and wind. Investigators would later describe it as eerily preserved, like time just stopped. But time didn't stop. Someone interrupted it. In the following days, as drones circled the lake and search dogs combed the forest, a single question echoed across the valley. How do 3 people simply disappear in a place so small, where everyone knows everyone? The morning after their disappearance, the search began quietly. Just 3 locals calling out names that never answered. Within hours, Black Hollow Lake turned into a command post of flashing lights and confusion. The air was thick with wet pine and fear. Neighbors who knew Clara, Jonas, and Eli since childhood stood at the edge of the forest, staring at the still water like it held its breath. Sheriff Renner's voice trembled as he gave orders. Search east, stay close, watch for signs of wildlife. But deep down, everyone felt it. This wasn't a simple case of lost campers. When Detective Leland arrived, she didn't ask many questions. She only looked around and whispered, "Something happened here. But not last night." The first clue came mid-morning, a half-buried backpack, damp but intact. Inside, a camera lens, a lighter, and a small metal key no one could identify. Nearby, the forest floor was disturbed, scuffed, dirt, torn leaves, but no clear signs of struggle. Forensic teams photographed everything, but Detective Leland's focus never left the lake. If they ran, she said quietly, they ran towards something. Later that day, Eli's camera was found submerged a few feet from shore. When recovered, its final recording was only 37 seconds long. The audio captured a faint voice, Clara's, whispering, "It's watching us." By the second day, the story had spread beyond the town. Reporters gathered at the roadblock, their cameras trained on the mist-covered woods, like vultures circling an unseen carcass. Locals whispered theories, wild animals, an accident, a cult. But beneath the chatter was fear, a kind that lived in silence and side glances. Sheriff Renner insisted they'd find the trio alive. Detective Leland said nothing. That night, she reviewed the drone footage in her motel room, pausing on one frame. A faint silhouette standing in the tree line, motionless, almost human. On the third morning, a fisherman reported something drifting near the northern inlet. Deputies arrived within minutes. It wasn't a body, but a torn piece of canvas from one of the missing tents, its edges burned as though scorched by heat. The lab would later confirm traces of kerosene. Detective Leland stared at the fragment, her face pale under the early light. She realized the truth no one wanted to voice. Someone had tried to erase the evidence. As she looked over the lake's cold expanse, the fog began to rise again, curling in shapes that almost resembled figures, 3 of them, standing side by side. By the 4th day, the case had already begun to fracture under pressure. Media swarmed the town, searching for answers that even the police didn't have. Search maps filled the command post walls, red circles marking possible trails, but every path ended in silence. Detective Leland kept her focus on the timeline. When the phones stopped, when the last text was sent, when the forest swallowed their signal, Jonas' last message to a coworker read only, "Heard something by the water." As the days passed, even the most determined volunteers began to falter, their optimism eroding under the relentless fog. The question was no longer where they went, but what they found before they vanished. Under the surface of the lake, divers worked in silence. The water was murky, visibility less than 2 feet. Every descent felt like stepping into darkness itself. One diver described the sensation later. You could feel the cold pulling you down, like it didn't want you to leave. They found nothing. No remains, no gear, no sign of life. But at 15 feet deep, a diver's flashlight caught something metallic glinting from the silt. It was Ely's camera tripod, folded neatly, like it had been placed there intentionally. Back at the precinct, Leland reviewed each recovered piece. Photos, timestamps, footprints. A pattern was forming, but it wasn't linear. The trio's movements didn't make sense. Their last known locations contradicted each other. It was as though the evidence was leading investigators in circles. Late that night, a forensic technician enhanced the final seconds of Ely's footage. In the grainy darkness, a shape appeared, a figure standing on the opposite shore, unmoving. The timestamp, 11:47 p.m. The police report notes, no known person or vehicle was recorded entering or leaving the area after 8:00 p.m. Locals began to withdraw from helping. Rumors spread that the lake was cursed, that the woods didn't want to be searched. Some claimed to hear voices at night, faint and distant, calling their names from the trees. Sheriff Renner dismissed the talk as panic, but Leland couldn't shake the feeling that something intangible was influencing everyone around the investigation. Late one evening, she drove to the lake alone. She parked near the old boat dock and sat in silence, listening. For a moment, she thought she heard laughter. 3 voices overlapping softly. Then the wind shifted and it was gone. By the end of the week, the official search was scaled back. Families were told to prepare for the worst. But as the equipment was packed away, a deputy called Leland to a discovery just off the logging road. A small clearing with tire tracks and the remnants of a burned-out fire pit. Among the ashes lay a melted phone case and a fragment of a silver ring. The engraving inside was still legible. E.T. It was Ely's. Leland stared at it for a long time before closing her gloved hand around the evidence bag. The forest around her was utterly still, as if listening. 2 weeks after the disappearance, Detective Leland sat alone in the precinct's evidence room, surrounded by a growing archive of unanswered questions. The recovered footage, analyzed frame by frame, revealed more than anyone wanted to admit. In one of Ely's final clips, the camera pans past the tree line. Just before static consumes the lens, a figure appears in the distance, standing motionless between 2 pines. It's there for less than a second, but its eyes reflect the firelight, bright and unnatural. Leland's pulse quickened. Whatever happened at Black Hollow wasn't random, and it wasn't over. Somewhere beneath the surface of this quiet town, the truth was rotting like something buried too long. That afternoon, Leland revisited Jonas' auto shop, hoping to understand his last days before the trip. The garage smelled of oil and rust. A framed photo of the 3 friends hung by the office door, smiling, carefree, alive. The shop foreman told her Jonas had seemed distracted the week before, asking about old county property near the lake, a patch of land long sealed off by the forestry department. He'd mentioned finding something weird there, but never explained what. Leland drove out to the coordinates later that day. What she found wasn't on any map. A rusted fence, a collapsed watchtower, and an old sign that read U.S. Research Facility, Restricted Access. The discovery of the abandoned research site sent a ripple through the investigation. Records showed it had been decommissioned in 1998 after an unexplained chemical incident. But no public record mentioned any cleanup. Leland requested files from the state archive, but access was denied. Classified. Meanwhile, Ely's recovered phone data revealed a video thumbnail labeled Night 3. When opened, it showed the trio walking through the woods, laughing nervously. Jonas says, "We're close now. Look." The camera pans to reveal a chain-link fence glowing faintly in the dark. A mechanical hum echoes in the background. That's where the footage ends. Leland's instincts told her that the missing trio had uncovered something never meant to be seen. She drove to the county records office. demanding access to land files from the 1990s. The clerk hesitated before producing a single document, an incomplete blueprint marked Black Hollow Containment. No explanation, no department name, just a set of coordinates leading deep beneath the lake's northern ridge. That night, she shared the file with Sheriff Renner, who warned her to drop it. "You start asking about that place," he said, "and people stop returning your calls." Later that night, Leland sat in her motel room, listening to the storm against the roof. She played the enhanced audio from Eli's final recording again, slowed to half speed. Beneath the static, another sound emerged. It wasn't wind. It was rhythmic, mechanical, almost like a generator. And then, faintly, a voice, male, distant, saying, "They shouldn't have come here." Leland froze. The timestamp confirmed it was recorded within minutes of the trio's disappearance. She leaned back in her chair, realization washing over her. This was no accident. Someone had been there that night, and they were still hiding something. Detective Leland's requests for information on the Black Hollow containment site went unanswered. Files vanished from the record system, calls redirected to dead lines, and state officials insisted no such site ever existed. But the people of the town knew better. They spoke in whispers of the Hollow, a place fenced off long before any of them were born. One night, as she walked the narrow main street, an elderly woman approached her, eyes sunken and voice trembling. "You're looking for those kids," she said. "You should know. They weren't the first." The woman handed Leland a faded photograph of 5 people standing at the same lake, dated 1984. None were ever found again. The next morning, Leland visited the town archives housed in the old courthouse basement. The air was heavy with mildew and dust, the silence broken only by the hum of fluorescent lights. In a box marked Public Incidents 1980s, she found several missing persons reports. 5 hikers, last seen near Black Hollow Lake, identical to the photograph Edith gave her. Attached was a single memo stamped "Restricted." The memo referenced contamination, government oversight, and the relocation of residents near the lake. At the bottom, a signature, Captain Dale Renner. Leland froze. The sheriff's connection to the site was older and deeper than he'd ever admitted. That evening, Leland confronted Sheriff Renner in his office. The storm outside battered the windows, thunder shaking the glass. Renner's shoulders sagged as he listened, saying nothing. When she placed the memo on his desk, his jaw tightened. "You don't understand what that place was," he muttered. "They told us it was just testing equipment. We didn't know it was still active." Leland pressed further. Renner's eyes lifted slowly. "When those kids disappeared," he said, "I knew exactly where they'd gone. I just couldn't admit it." His voice cracked. They found the entrance. Later that night, Leland followed Renner's directions to an unmarked service road winding deep into the forest. The path ended at a chain-link gate, half buried by moss. Beyond it, an overgrown concrete tunnel led straight into the hillside, sealed with a corroded metal door. On its surface, faint lettering read, "Facility 19. Sublevel access." The padlock was broken, the edges of the door scorched black. Inside, the air was damp and metallic, echoing with the sound of dripping water. Leland shone her flashlight down the tunnel. The beam caught faint graffiti on the wall. "We heard it, too." Inside the tunnel, Leland found the remnants of camp gear. Boots, a torn jacket, a shattered phone. The walls were lined with rusted pipes and faded warning signs. At the end of the corridor, an open elevator shaft descended into darkness. The control panel still glowed faintly, powered by something unseen. She pressed a button, and for a moment, nothing happened. Nothing happened. Then, a low mechanical hum filled the tunnel, followed by the sound of chains groaning below. Leland stepped back, heart racing, on the dusty floor near her feet. She noticed a boot print, small, familiar, the same pattern as the prints by the lake. She wasn't alone. The morning after her descent into the tunnel, Detective Leland returned to the surface pale and shaken. She hadn't told anyone what she found, or what she thought she'd heard echoing below. Hours later, a call from a dive team shattered the uneasy calm. A sonar sweep of Black Hollow Lake had detected a large metallic object near the northern trench. Something bigger than a vehicle, buried beneath the sediment. Leland and Renner arrived as the recovery team prepared to bring it up. The water churned black as the crane lifted its find from the depths, a rusted steel hatch engraved with the same words she'd seen underground. Facility 19. The hatch's recovery triggered a new wave of questions and fear. The structure had been sealed from the inside, welded shut decades ago. State authorities ordered the area closed immediately, citing environmental hazards. But before the lockdown, Leland managed to retrieve a fragment of evidence from the debris. A corroded ID tag with the name Eli Turner. Lab tests confirmed it wasn't decades old. It was recent. That night, she stared at the tag under her desk lamp, trying to understand how something belonging to one of the missing could be found inside a sealed facility that hadn't been opened in 20 years. The state took control of the case overnight, deploying unmarked vehicles and removing all local personnel. Sheriff Renner was ordered to stand down. Leland, refusing to surrender her files, found herself isolated, her badge under review. That same evening, she received a brown envelope slid beneath her motel door. Inside were photographs, black and white, taken decades apart, each showing the same spot near the lake, each depicting different groups of missing people. In the final photograph, captured by drone just a week earlier, 3 faint silhouettes stood in that exact same position. Clara, Jonas, Eli. Driven by obsession, Leland returned to the lake one final time under cover of darkness. She brought sonar equipment from the evidence trailer and scanned the lake bed herself. The readings were irregular, hollow spaces beneath the sediment like corridors. The data confirmed it. The facility extended directly under the lake. Then, through her headset, a sound emerged. Static, then a faint voice. Ellie's voice, repeating, "Don't come down." Her hands trembled as she stared at the sonar screen, watching new signals flicker into view, moving beneath her boat. Not fish, not machine. Patterns, like footsteps, tracing the lake floor. By dawn, the facility was gone. The state's emergency response teams sealed off the entire valley, detonating charges that collapsed the tunnels beneath the lake. Black Hollow was declared an environmental quarantine zone. The waterline dropped several feet, exposing a muddy expanse where the hatch once lay. Reporters were told the case was closed, an accident caused by unstable ground. But Leland knew the truth was far darker. Standing on the cracked shoreline, she gazed into the retreating water and whispered, "They found something buried that was never meant to surface." Behind her, the wind carried a sound. 3 faint voices whispering from across the lake. In the days after the lake's destruction, silence fell over Black Hollow. Roads were barricaded, reporters expelled, and official records sealed under federal order. But Detective Leland refused to leave. She was placed on suspension, her access revoked, yet she remained in town, chasing ghosts through memories and half-burned files. Then, unexpectedly, Sheriff Renner requested a private meeting. When she arrived, he was alone in his darkened office, a bottle untouched on the desk. His eyes were hollow. "They told us to build over it," he said. "We didn't ask what was underneath. We just did our job." He slid a folder toward her labeled Project Marrow. Inside were photographs of experiments, tests involving sound frequencies, resonance, and human subjects. Renner confessed that in the late 1990s, the federal government contracted a private firm to study resonant phenomena at the site beneath the lake. Locals were told it was geological research, but the truth was far more insidious. They were testing acoustic frequencies believed to alter human perception, tones that could provoke hallucinations, fear, and disorientation. Several volunteers vanished during early trials. When containment failed, the facility was sealed and erased from public record. "We buried it," Renner said, voice cracking, "and now they've dug it back up." He admitted something else, too. His own brother was one of the first test subjects. None of them were ever recovered. Leland listened in stunned silence. Renner's hands shook as he handed her one final item. "A key. Storage unit," he said. "Everything I couldn't destroy." Inside that storage facility, Leland found a stack of unmarked VHS tapes. The first showed shaky security footage of the containment chamber collapsing after a power surge. The second tape froze her blood. It was dated just a month before Clara Jonas and Eli vanished. 3 figures entered the same tunnel she had found, their flashlights cutting through the dark. It wasn't archival footage. It was theirs. Leland replayed the tape again and again, studying every frame. The trio reached a sealed chamber marked Marrow, Test Site B. The audio was distorted, filled with low-frequency hums that made her skin crawl, even through the playback. At Minute says, "Do you feel that?" Clara laughs nervously. Then the camera tilts violently. The picture shakes, flashes of light strobe across the tunnel, and a shriek, mechanical, not human, pierces the recording. When the image stabilizes, the corridor is empty. The hum continues, louder, pulsing. Then a whisper close to the mic. "Don't follow." Renner turned himself in the following morning, confessing his role in concealing the original facility's purpose. "They told us it was to protect people," he told reporters as he was led away. "But we were protecting ourselves." That evening, Leland recorded her final statement for the case file. Her voice was steady but distant. "Black Hollow wasn't haunted," she said. "It was resonating. The frequencies they tested didn't fade. They changed the lake. The ground remembers sound." She paused, listening to her own breath on the recorder. Faintly, beneath the static came 3 overlapping voices, laughing, just for a second, before dissolving into silence. Months passed. The case was officially closed, its details buried beneath layers of redacted reports and sealed court files. The town of Black Hollow began to empty. Stores shuttered, homes abandoned. But Detective Leland stayed. Something inside her refused to let go. Late one night, she reviewed the final recovered phone from the lake. Clara's. Most of it was corrupted, but one video had been partially restored. The footage began with Clara whispering, "We shouldn't have come here." Behind her, the others argued quietly, their voices trembling. Then, the sound, an impossible low resonance, made the air tremble. The camera shook violently before cutting to black. Leland stared at the screen, her reflection flickering over Clara's frozen face. Driven by obsession, Leland returned to the ruins of the facility one final time. The ground still bore scars from the demolition. Steam rose from fissures near the lake's edge. She walked through the shattered tunnel entrance until her flashlight flickered out. In the silence, she heard it again. That low hum, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't coming from the ground. It was echoing inside her skull, rhythmic, resonant. She pressed her hands against her ears and screamed, but the sound didn't stop. Beneath the tone, voices emerged. "Clara Jonas?" Eli, calling her name in unison. When she awoke, hours had passed. Her body lay half-submerged in mud, the dawn mist curling around her like smoke. In her hand, she still gripped Clara's camera. Its battery impossibly still held charge. She pressed play. The footage was grainy, nearly indecipherable, but one frame froze her breath. A reflection in the lake's surface. Not the trio, not her. Something vast and human-shaped, standing beneath the water, watching them. Its form rippled, shifting like light through glass. Leland replayed it again and again until the lens cracked from heat, the image lost forever. Weeks later, the official documentary aired, edited, polished, censored. It told of 3 hikers lost to tragedy, an investigation closed by evidence and logic. But the locals whispered another version. They spoke of nights when the lake glowed faintly blue, when the wind carried voices calling from the trees. Some swore they saw a shape standing just beneath the surface. Leland never appeared on camera again. Her badge was retired quietly, her home sold months later. Yet her desk drawer, left locked, contained one final tape labeled only, "The Hollow Speaks." No one has dared to play it since. Black Hollow Lake remains closed to this day. Its waters untouched, its shoreline fenced off by order of the state. But every few years, a camper reports hearing laughter near the fog. Search teams find no one, only footprints that lead to the water and vanish. The case file of Clara Wren, Jonas Hale, and Eli Turner lies sealed in the Department of Defense archives, marked classified, Project Marrow. In her final report, Detective Leland wrote one line before disappearing herself. "Some frequencies never fade. They just find new listeners." The last entry ends there.